Prime Minister Modi, has an agenda to make Muslims and Christians and other groups besides Hindus second-class citizens in India. And those are among the early stages of the genocidal process.
If India doesn't change its course, it's going towards a genocide. These are the words of Dr. Gregory Stanton, who is the founder and chairperson of Genocide Watch. He's joining us today from Virginia, where he'll be talking to us about the situation in Kashmir and Manipur. Thank you so much, Dr. Stanton, for joining us. I came across one of your statements from 2022, where you briefed the US Congress, and your words were that you saw signs of a genocide happening in India. And
right.
You've been warning India that it could lead to a genocide, and your own formula or the points that you've given, for example, when you talked about Rwanda, you were proven right. So 4 years on, where do you think India stands right now?
Our view is that although widespread extermination has not yet come, and in other words, they're not yet in a full-scale genocide. They're in a state that is just before genocide. There's persecution widely of Muslims all over India, and that is the stage right before extermination. And there's a lot of evidence, in fact, that the Hindu extremist government of India, under Prime Minister Modi, has an agenda to make Muslims and Christians and other groups besides Hindus second-class citizens in India. And those are among the early stages of the genocidal process. And that's why we believe that India is in great danger. We believe basically that India has a Nazi government. And what we've got here is what you could call a religiously based extreme nationalism combined with the sort of violence that's associated with Nazism. We consider India to be one of the highest danger countries.
Doctor, your 10 stages model that you've researched on, you've said that several stages of that have already been present in India. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. Let me explain a little bit about how we analyze genocide, because we see genocide not as some instant event, but rather as a process that develops. And you can see the process developing in many places. It doesn't mean that they have reached the full stage of, extermination, but the stages are basically this: classification, in which you have an us versus them. In India, it's very clear: the Hindus versus the Muslims, Christians, and other groups. The second stage is symbolization, in which you have symbols that are associated with the other groups and with your group. And of course, in India, the mosques, the different kinds of ways of expression, the languages, all of these things are ways of symbolization. The third is discrimination, and you have where certain groups are excluded from all kinds of rights, and all kinds of employment and other things like this. What we've got here, for instance, is in India, the Citizenship Amendment Act essentially made it impossible for Muslims who had come into Assam to keep their Indian residents there. They've tried to classify all these people as somehow foreigners, and therefore subject to displacement, to deportation.
But doctor, some might say that for a country like India, that is essentially considered as one of the world's largest democracy, and associating the word genocide with a country like India, some might say, your critics might say, that this is a bit of a stretch. How would you respond to that?
It's not a stretch, because a lot of people think that democracies cannot commit genocide, and that's wrong. They can. The United States, for instance, has committed genocide against its Native American population, and it's a democracy. It's also committed genocide against African Americans during our slave trade and slave period. So we've had genocides right here in a democracy. And so, in other words, even though there can be democracies, it doesn't protect minority groups. And so, what we've got is a situation, for instance, where we haven't reached the stage of extermination in India. So we don't say it's having a full-scale genocide yet. What we're doing is we're trying to warn that if it continues on the current course, that it can have genocidal massacres and it could get much worse. So the fact that we have a democracy here, and we do, I mean, courts still resist. We have the Congress that's still resisting, but we're still in danger. In other words, we shouldn't assume that genocide is an all or none thing, that it gradually develops. And that's what we're seeing in India.
Doctor, you mentioned about Assam. Manipur has seen ethnic violence, a resurging ethnic violence for the last 2 years, and then there is Kashmir as well. Kashmir has seen a lot of unrest, and a lot of
Yes.
rights group, including yours. They've always pointed out the excesses of Indian forces. How would you characterize both the states, Manipur and Kashmir?
Right. I think both are in stages of genocide. Kashmir, it's been very clear for many, many years, even though it's a Muslim majority state, that the Muslim minority, well, it's actually the majority in Kashmir, has been persecuted by the Indian government for many, many years. It's had large contingents of the Indian military in Kashmir, widespread imprisonment of opposition leaders and so forth. So there you have what I would call persecution. Again, it's not full-scale genocide in the sense of trying to kill all the Muslims or anything like that, but it is so close that what you have is almost legalized murder. And what we've got in Manipur is very similar. There you have Hindus who are located in the central part of Manipur, in Imphal and areas like that, who are dominant in that low-lying area, that Imphal area. And then we have the Maitai, or the name of the group that lies there, and the Kuki, who are largely Christian in the hills. They are, as they call them in India, which I think is actually a pejorative term, they call them hill tribes. Well, these are, of course, major ethnic groups. The Naga, the Kuki, other groups like this. They've been Christians for many, many years. And so now the Maitai, the people in the lowlands, are trying to take over territories of the Kuki, and they also have done it in a very vicious way, because the stage after dehumanization, the stage after discrimination is dehumanization, where you try to portray the other group as less than human. And in fact, the way the Matai have been treating Kuki women, for instance, with mass rape, with parading them naked down streets, with burning them alive, things like this, these are evidences of that kind of dehumanization.
Dr. Stanton, you've previously mentioned about Hindutva ideology, and you've called it the core reason behind all of what is happening in India. Do you still stand by that? And you've also mentioned that India has a prime minister who was from RSS and he follows RSS ideology. What do you have to say on that?
Yes, I think India's BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, is a racist party. In other words, and it's not just racist; it's also religiously. It's religiously. What would I call it? It's more than bias. That they believe that their religion is true and other religions are not. And so by that, they are excluding these other groups from real, full humanity and from full Indian citizenship. And they would like to, in fact, I think, take away the citizenship of a lot of Indian Muslims and other groups, Christians and others. They claim that Islam and Christianity are foreign ideologies in India, that only Hinduism is the real Indian ideology. or religion. And when you couple religious exclusionary religion, as we have here with the Hindutva movement in India, with this nationalism, extreme nationalism that you find with Modi and his government, you get Nazism. That's what Nazism is based on. It's a kind of religious doctrine. You can find it also, by the way, in communism, which is a secular religion. You can find it in Nazism, which is another secular religion. And when you have these kinds of exclusionary religions that are saying these other people aren't really people, they're not fully people, then you have this real high potential for genocide. And that's what will be next in India. And also, I think it's already happening in Manipur.
Dr. Stanton, you had a meeting with the Rwandan president where you had warned him that there might be a genocide in Rwanda in 5 years from 1989. And history is evident that it happened. If you had that same kind of access to leaders in New Delhi, what would you say to them?
I'd warn them the same thing. In 1988, I was asked to go to Rwanda to help them get their justice system working properly. I'm a law professor as well as anthropology, cultural anthropologist. And so I went and spent a year there, in fact. And it was clear after I'd done my research all around Rwanda, asking everybody about why the justice system didn't work. And by the way, the main reason it didn't work is it was a Belgian justice system, which was inappropriate for Africa. Anyway, after that research, I also saw we had a divided society between Tutsis and Hutus, and that there have been already many massacres in that society. And right on the ID cards, it said whether you're a Tutsi or a Hutu. So when I said, I had a meeting, a dinner one night with the president of the Supreme Court. I said, can't you abolish these ID cards? He said, no, we don't have a judicial review here. You got to go to the president. So I got a meeting with President Habyarimana, and I said to him, you've got to get rid of these ID cards with Tutsi and Hutu on them. And it was like a mask went out. He did not want to hear this. What I realized is that he, in fact, had led several genocidal massacres against Tutsis himself. And so he didn't want to hear it. And of course, then, and I warned him, I went in that meeting. I told him, if you don't do something to stop a genocide in this country, you're going to have a genocide within 5 years. Those were my words. And I had a witness there with me who heard those words. Well, as you know, that was 1989, and the genocide began in 1994. So that is the power of the model that we have of how to predict genocide. This 10-stage model works. I don't think they'd listen, but
why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they listen?
They won't listen because they're religious extremists, and religious extremists won't listen. If you'd gone to Hitler and told him, look, your campaign against the Jews is completely wrong, he would have just laughed. He would have said, no, they're the cause of all of our evils. Well, that's exactly what the Hindutva people say about the problems in India. It's all due to the Muslims. It's all due to the Christians. That sort of religious extremism, exclusionary religion is what I call that, results in genocide.
Doctor, lastly, when you mention Hindutva ideology, RSS, BJP, it comes across as if it is a political problem and it rests with a political party. But some of the experts, they believe that this hatred has seeped into societal levels, and now the society has much more hatred in it towards Muslims and Christians. Do you think that this is just a political problem, or this has seeped into the societal levels or an average Indian?
I think it is an historic problem that has been caused by a long, long period. First, of course, Muslim rule in much of India under the Mughals that resulted in, frankly, discrimination against Hindus. And then also then British colonialism, which imposed Christianity. It didn't impose it in the same quite way. I mean, we already had some Christian states in India, like Kerala, for instance. But for the most part, the British, even though they allowed Hinduism to flourish and they allowed Islam to flourish and Christianity to flourish, nevertheless, it was seen as a Christian regime. And so there's resentment among many Indians against the kind of suppression they perceive. I don't agree that it was purely accurate, but the oppression they perceive occurred when they were under Muslim rule and under British rule. So you've got this reaction to that. And I think that's what's really at heart. Now, I think a lot of Indians do see through this kind of religious extremism. And that's why you still have a lot of opposition to Modi. He isn't going to win every election. And that's why I still actually do have hope for India, because they still do have a democracy. Now, Modi's trying to undermine it. He's trying to take control of the courts, of the press, of all kinds of resistance that might occur.
Very strong words, Dr. Gregory Stanton. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.